And welcome back to another Inside Texas live show. Joined here with Miss Emily Grace McWhorter. Welcome back, her second appearance on Inside Texas. We're here to talk to you about everything in the league. We'll start with the playoff bracket and what that looks like for the SEC right now. Obviously, a lot of talk there for a lot of different teams. So it's like half the conference is still in the playoff picture. And then we'll preview a couple of really big games this weekend, with the Crimson Tide hosting the old nasty Sooners and Texas traveling to Athens, Georgia to see Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. But before we get into it, you guys hop on over to Inside Texas and check out the forums. You can join right now for just a single $1. You can get, it's the best place for in-depth scoop on recruiting, in-depth scoop on the team. The analysis is all great. Y'all hear them all on YouTube. You can see their words put in writing form. So go check out Inside Texas right now for just $1. I believe that lasts all the way through the new year. Could be wrong, but I believe that it does. Go check out it.com. All right, Emily, welcome back. How are you this evening?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back. I must have done okay last time I was here for you guys to let the Alabama reporter back in the mix, but I appreciate the warm welcome and the invite.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Had to have you back on, and particularly was kind of aiming for this week because you do have a really big game, and you have a really big game with a program that Texas is obviously very, very familiar with. But let's start with the playoff bracket. We'll get into all that there after the about the half-hour mark. We will have Chris Marler joining us in just a moment. But yeah, so for the playoff picture, again, it does feel like half of the teams are still alive. But you cover Alabama. Does it feel like Alabama in your mind is kind of safe regarding this playoff picture? There's still a little bit of work to be done.
Well, I think there's still work to be done, and I think that's echoing the sentiment of what the coaching staff is preaching to the players, what the players are preaching to themselves, and vice versa. I think that it's a very, understood element that there are still a lot of hurdles that have to be jumped before they reach their end goal, and that's the mindset that you want to have, right? Especially this time of year. I think Ty Simpson said it best. He said, we did have a good September, barring that first week. We did have a really good October. And you can't piss it away in November. And that can happen. I mean, I think that, when you look at Alabama's schedule, they do have OU this weekend, like we mentioned, in Bryant-Denny. You have Eastern Illinois, and then you head down to the Plains, to Auburn, to Jordan-Hare, which is a spooky, spooky place. And I think that, there's a taste in everyone's mouth from this time a year ago where Alabama goes into the OU game and everyone thinks that they control their own destiny, and they got kicked in the teeth, to put it quite frankly. And so, it's one of those things where I feel like the mindset is very much so no one is going to be overlooked. And based off what I've heard in terms of, practice energy and all of that good stuff, it's where it needs to be. But I think that you'd be kind of silly at this point to feel like anyone is really a lock into, the playoff picture right now when it comes to Alabama.
No, I think, and you can say the same for all of the SEC, maybe outside of Texas A&M, who feels like they might be are you wearing maroon right now? Is that maroon?
It's crimson.
It's crimson.
I don't know.
First off, hi, how are you?
Hi, okay. This is so fun.
What's up, EG?
What's up? This is great. Cord, bring us all together.
How are you doing?
I'm a people person. Chris, welcome back. You guys seen Chris on the channels 3 or 4 times by now. And so we only have him for a half hour, so enjoy him while he's here. It's always great to see his beautiful face on the channel. He's a busy man today. We did just start the show, my man. We had to move things around a little bit.
We're good.
We're locked in. Well, tell us, how's your day been? You've had content on about 9 different platforms so far. So thanks for spending some time with us.
I don't feel like I'm well versed enough to talk about the games this weekend. I'm glad EG's here to talk a little about the Bama Oklahoma stuff. The injury reports just came out. It's a big weekend. Like, it's a really big weekend.
No, I agree, Chris. I'm gonna be honest. I feel the same way. Like, I was counting on you being here, so this works out.
I love it. And I normally get a little bit of a teaser and tell everybody, who's coming on. Wasn't able to do that today, so my apologies, guys. But yeah, here you see it, Chris. We're talking a little bit about the playoff bracket. I just asked about Alabama. There's still work to be done. Of course, there's still work to be done. You saw this game sneak up on Alabama last year. It's not really sneaking up on Alabama this year for obvious reasons, as they want the revenge factor. You'd think a little bit, but at the same time, Oklahoma has a pretty competent product out there. Chris, season's end, SEC will have how many teams in the playoff bracket?
So it all hinges on the game this weekend, I think. really one way or the other. I think if Bama wins this weekend, I feel confident they get 5 because you have 4. I think they're not going anywhere. I think A&M, Georgia, Bama, and Ole Miss are in no matter what. I just firmly believe that if Oklahoma wins this weekend, they're going to win out. They would be in. If Texas wins one of their last 3 games or one of their last 2 games against Georgia or A&M, I think that they would probably get the nod because the committee. I don't know if I agree with it yet, just because of all the other stuff that has to play out. And the other one that no one seems to be talking about it, and I thought it was the biggest travesty of the entire what do you call it last night? The broadcast last night was Vanderbilt being at 14, because if Vanderbilt wins against Tennessee on the road in their last game of the season, they're 10-2. Their 2 losses would be on the road to Texas and Alabama, and people will forget how much of a blowout that Texas game was, I think, in comparison to what the final score said. And I think Vandy would get in. I was shocked to see Utah and BYU, not really BYU, but I was shocked to see Utah ahead of Vanderbilt based on the fact that, I don't know what Vandy's best win is, but I know they didn't lose by 24 at home to Texas Tech like Utah did. So that was a little bit surprising to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. Vanderbilt clearly has the better losses. I hate to point at it like that, but I mean, if you're just looking at the 2 teams going by the eye test, I think Vanderbilt would be favored by a touchdown, maybe a hair more if they were to play in Utah on a neutral field. There's going to be somebody out there that actually knows what that number is. But yeah, I mean, I think 5 is a pretty safe number, assuming that this weekend goes the way that I think it will. I think Alabama finds a way to win that game at home. But yeah, I mean, nothing too shocking for myself. Just looking off this, nothing off the top of the mind where I'm just like, wow. Outside again, I'm going to sit here and continue to scream that Notre Dame should not be number 9. But how about you, Emily? Anything that you saw last night on the playoff bracket reveal, that kind of just took you by surprise?
I mean, I would agree with you guys. Nothing really major. I think that I always leave with just even more questions about how the committee decides things. And I think we all are kind of in that boat about what is the deciding factor on certain elements, right? Because you have strength of schedule, you have the eye test, you have head-to-heads, and it just, as we enter this, second half of the season, we enter November and we start looking at all these different matchups and possibilities. It's one of those things where it sounds cheesy to say, but until these games are played, I genuinely could see it going so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I think we all are in that boat of this weekend is very significant, but I also think you look ahead to 2 weeks from now, rivalry week, and I think that those games are going to have a really major impact, more so than we've seen, in the last couple of years, especially when you even look at like the Georgia Tech game. That's a game that historically, it's kind of been a non-factor, but I'm looking at that game. And then, Alabama, Auburn, of course, there's always something that is to be said about that game when it's in Auburn. I was, talking about that before you got on, Chris. And so I think that when you look at the slate of games this weekend, a lot matters come 2 weeks based on the results, on Saturday.
No, that's really well said. I mean, this week and next week, they're going to determine obviously everything. I mean, that's super easy to say, but there's a handful of matchups that I'm looking across right now. I'm a guy with it sitting there at 10 with 2 losses for Texas, and it's like, okay, there is a path to 9-3, but Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State is going to be massive, and then you have Oregon, USC is going to be massive. And then you have a potential rematch between BYU and Tech that's going to be massive. There's still point is, like you just said, Emily, there's so many variables that could take place, or scenarios rather that could take place. And so for me, I mean, I'm pretty nervous about it all because it kind of takes like almost a perfect, playing out of events for us to get in. But it is going to be incredibly entertaining. There's just so much that could happen and some really, really good matchups. Say what you will about realignment, but some of these cool late season matchups, we have a Texas Georgia, we have an OU Bama. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like you have some really, really cool matchups in the Big Ten too. I'm not here trying to be an SEC homer. There's some fun matchups over there as well. But I'm gonna go to you.
Dude, Purdue Northwestern. That's gonna be, dude. There's gonna be dozens of people watching that, and I can't wait. It's gonna be sick.
Are you going to be there? I'm sure you're. As soon as this is
over,
I mean,
there's nothing I love more than an 11 a.m. brunch time kickoff in a Hatfield High School stadium for those 2 teams.
Yeah,
I agree with what you're saying. I think I will tell you right now. I think if you're a Bama fan and you're being honest with yourself, the last 3 weeks have to just terrify you because the hay was in the barn so many times last year. Where it's like you beat Georgia. You have a 93% chance to make the playoff. You lose to Vandy the next week. Then you lose to Tennessee, and it's like you have this big game against LSU, and like, man, like what are they going to be able to do? And they trounce LSU at LSU, and then they get dog walked by Oklahoma, and it's like going to Auburn is never fun for anyone that's not an Auburn fan. And it's I miss the Mercer days. I miss the Mercer days a lot. I'll tell you that. Mercer and Mississippi State back to back was a lot of fun for Bama.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's one of those things where I think, and again, I will reiterate though that, based off of the conversations I've had with coaches and players, they're not overlooking this by any means. And the magnitude of what these next 3 weeks mean, keep the main thing, go 1-0, don't look ahead. But I think especially this week with coming off of last year, and Coach DeBoer said it on Monday in his press conference that, it's hard not to remember the past with this, and that the team should remember what happened because they don't want to repeat that. Yeah. And Ty Simpson even talked about it in postgame on Saturday. He was asked about, looking ahead to OU, and he said it was a spooky feeling and he never wants to feel that again when they went to Norman last season. And so I think that, from what I've heard, and I was, saying this before you got on, Chris, that the energy at practice has been super high. I think that this is a very different team as well than what we saw last season against OU. And I think, it starts at the quarterback position. No longer is it Jalen Milroe, it's Ty Simpson. And so, there are a lot of strengths that come with that. And I think that what's really encouraging for me is no one is satisfied with where this team is at right now. And so I feel like there's still such a potential and like growth track to unlock with the offense and the defense. And that's what you want to be happening. Now, the defense seems to be firing more, completely right now in all cylinders. And that's what you want again this time of year, for your defense to be super reliable. And the offense is going to kick it into gear. They will. Because, you'd be remiss not to with, the leadership from Coach DeBoer, Coach Grubb, Nick Sheridan down to Ty Simpson. And so I think that it's one of those things where I'm looking forward to Saturday. And I think it's just another test for Bama on a long list of tests that they've
had. One thing we'll say about this relationship first, Manning versus Marler, is quite beautiful. I do love that. Joshy, thanks for being here, brother. But Chris was going to call it how it is. Last year, he came on to my channel and he was slandering the hell out of Oklahoma and Texas A&M, and for good reason. You know what I mean? And maybe not A&M so much as Oklahoma, but and I think he came on Oklahoma week and he was like, "Dude, Oklahoma sucks." He said that too, but Oklahoma sucks. Texas is going to beat the crap out of them. That was a great clip. He called it though. I mean, Texas went into the big house and showed that Michigan, they weren't great early in the year. He wasn't very impressed with I can't remember who they played. I think it was like San Diego State in the opener or something. I don't remember who it was. But
they've left the state of Michigan before the season. They left the state of Michigan one time since 2019 in the month of September. And it was to play Nebraska, who was 4-8, and it was the last day of the month. Like that's the only time dating back then. Like, listen, I love a deep dive, and I always jokingly say this. I'll get typos wrong a lot, but if there's one thing we're going to do when we talk about sports, because I'm so excited I get to do it for a living. We're going to do it with factual information. And some of this stuff that I see now, it's just so bizarre to me how much I feel like this like bias over for different like conferences has impacted actual rankings and things. And it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy how much of an influence it's had.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, the committee had a little bit of slander, if you will, and I hate to bring them up, but it isn't around the league segment. But the highest ranked SEC team is still Texas A&M. Do you think you guys, whoever wants to take it, or both of you touch on it if you want to, but like, have they played anyone? I mean, they're lining up in whipping teams is my point. And I have to bring this up to my Longhorn friends who are like, dude, they've played no one. And I'm like, okay, I don't love the schedule either. But they're lining up in whipping teams. It's not like, okay, well, they had a 3-point game with Arkansas. Okay, it's one game. They went to South Bend and won. Well, Notre Dame sucks. So what are y'all's thoughts on that? I mean, do you care that A&M's not ranked higher? Personally, I would have A&M at 1. That's not me trying to appease my Aggie wife. That's just I'm really not super overly impressed with the Big Ten play so far. I will leave it at that. There's still a lot of ball to be played, and that clip could come back and get me later on. But what are y'all's thoughts?
Chris, I'll let you take this one first, and I'll jump in.
So it's the scary thing about A&M is this. I think that like, one, they went on the road and beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame. The Arkansas game is whatever. It feels like we're kind of looking for something to pick on if you're looking at the Arkansas game, because the game it's a last minute touchdown to pull within 3. They were up by 10 for most of that. The thing that's scary about A&M for everyone else. Marcel Reed was like 13 of 31 in passing in that game against Notre Dame. They still found a way to win. They go to LSU, and they struggle in the first half with all these turnovers and self-inflicted wounds, but Cassius Howell is a monster and a nightmare and is in the backfield the entire game. Now, you talk about later in that game even, you kicked, was it Craver or Concepcion, returning kicks. They've hit on both those receivers in the portal. They have been great. And Reed's not going to blow you away with like any sort of like efficiency through the passing game. Like he's like 15th in the conference in completion percentage, but like he has been really, really good, and they have been really explosive on offense. And I just have to think that that's where you would rather be for this team when you know Mike Elko is a defensive-minded coach and will have some strengths coming down the line, I think, in some of those bigger matchups with what he's able to see just because of how good of a defensive coach he is. I have no problem with Indiana being ahead of A&M. Like, A&M is the number one strength of record. They have a higher strength of schedule. Me personally, I think Indiana is a really, really good football team. I think Ohio State should be number one. They haven't been beaten yet. They're the defending national champions, and they are awesome. Like, they are very, very good. They're stars all over the place. Indiana, I could see the argument, especially after this past weekend, but I just like by the slimness of margins, I think they're better than A&M, and I would be more comfortable with them being ahead of A&M. I hate to say it, but like it's hard to take A&M's track record out of the equation when you talk about them at this time of the year.
No, I think that's a great point too, because I mean, I remember the Texas A&M Auburn game from last season. How many overtimes was it? Four overtimes. And so I think that is something that's always going to, haunt A&M this time of year, like you said, Chris. But what sticks out to me about A&M is that they look very complete as a team. And I think that it's one of, it's an element to these good teams like Ohio State that look very complete. They look like they're, battle tested. And I would say that more about A&M because when it comes to the SEC, yes, Arkansas, it wasn't a blowout win. But we even talked about with Alabama, like the SEC is so good that you don't have a down week. Look at Mississippi State. You don't have these down weekends with these teams that historically, look at Vanderbilt. We're talking about them as, a playoff option when 3 years ago, you would have thought that College game day being there was a joke. Like none of us would have believed that. And so I think the parity in the SEC is so great that, I'm not faulting A&M for playing Arkansas close at all. I mean, what was the final score of the A&M Auburn game? Like 10-16, maybe?
16-10, yeah.
Yeah, 16-10. And so, right there you see that A&M has, they've gone through, some very good teams, but I don't know. The 3 spot is a little tough for me considering, the schedule they have played. Yeah. But I do think that Ohio State at 1 makes sense, but I could make an argument for flipping Indiana and A&M.
Yeah, and again, that's not me saying that I don't think, like you guys, that Indiana's a really good team. I think obviously what they've done over there in Bloomington the last couple of seasons is real special. Hard not to root for them, to be honest with you. And if A&M and Indiana met up in a match, I'd have no issue rooting for Red in that one. And yeah, Josh, I don't know who you're yelling at right now because it's kind of just us, brother. But it recalls a certain fan base last year who came back to our schedule very quiet. Yeah, that is funny. But in their defense, man, I'm saying the same thing I said last year. Texas was going in; they won every SEC game throughout 6 of their 8. They won by double digits, lost to Georgia, and then had a very late touchdown given up to Vanderbilt. To win that game by 3. And so it's weird. I feel like I'm in limbo and bizarro land because I was making an argument for Texas last year that I'm now having to use for A&M this year. I think A&M overall, that offense, like you said, Chris, is as explosive as anyone in the country. They're not going to blow you away as far as efficiency goes. Marcel's going to miss some gimmies, some bunnies, but at the same time, the plays that they hit on, I mean, they really pick up a lot of yards and they score on half of them. You have, they're okay in all 3 phases. I've seen Concepcion on the return game. And then, like you said, Elko's side of the ball, there's still youth on that side of the ball, still inexperienced. They don't have a ton of depth, but they've stayed healthy. They've stayed mostly healthy. They're better at tackling this year. And again, down the stretch, you know what I mean? Considering it is Elko's side of the ball, I do think we see some of their best football that they played throughout the year. So just curious to hear what y'all thought, because, I live in I got a lot of Aggies in my universe, and there's a lot of complaining about everything college football related. Y'all know how it goes.
Oh yeah. I live in Alabama, and you would be shocked the things. Actually, I don't think you would be shocked. And when I covered both Alabama and Auburn, I mean, it was a balancing act like I've never done before. And so I'm happy to kind of land it on one side, and that's the Bama side. But it's crazy. It's insane.
Yeah, I've learned that the balancing act is more difficult than anticipated. But we're going to keep going, guys. Going to hear from our word from sponsor David McClellan first.
Big financial decisions don't have to feel overwhelming. There's someone who can guide you every step of the way. David McClellan is a fiduciary financial advisor with Forum Financial, and he's working closely with his clients as a true financial life coach, guiding every aspect of your financial journey with expertise and care. If his name sounds familiar, that's because David was a swimmer at Texas and a member of several national championship teams. Today, he channels that same championship mindset into helping people win with their finances. David specializes in financial planning, and he's contributed numerous articles to Kiplinger on the topic of retirement tax bombs. And right now, David is offering viewers a free intro consultation to assess your financial situation. Do not miss this chance to get personalized guidance from a trusted expert. To schedule your free consult, email David at dmcclellan@forumfinancial.com, or you can call him directly at 312-933-8823. The contact info is in the description.
All right. Hey, we got our names up there now. All right. So, yeah, finally, just one click of the button. So, and I'm trying to put you on the spot here a little bit, but right now, November, what are we on, the 12th of November? Which SEC team has the best chance of winning a national title?
Oof.
You got to take this one first.
I typically don't like to make predictions. That's like kind of my bread and butter. Golly, this is putting me on the spot here, Cord. Winning a national title. I mean, I'm just gonna stick to my home team, Bama. Roll Tide.
I mean, with the way the defense is playing and considering who you're coached by on offense, I think just overall track record, I've been victim to Kalen DeBoer a couple times in my fandom, but can't hate it.
The black hoodie.
Yeah, I'm just glad I'm not seeing #purple rain on my timeline anymore. I felt like I saw that every day of my life for 2 years.
That's the funny part too. Is like when you start talking about Coach DeBoer, like his record against ranked teams. I mean, you guys have heard it all. Like, and the coaches that he has wins over is just so interesting when you really look at it. And what's so funny is I always go back to this. When I was covering Coach Saban's retirement, I did man on the street stuff, right? And so we'd go out and I'd be interviewing like, who do you want as your next head coach? And it was like Lane Kiffin. We want Lane. Not one person said Kalen DeBoer, who had just coached the national championship. No one said who he was because I feel like unless you were a really college football like diehard fan, he just wasn't on your radar. But he so should have been, when you looked outside of the SEC.
That's the thing. You hadn't seen him win in the SEC. You hadn't seen him win a national title at what, you know what I mean? So it's almost like he hasn't done it before. We don't know exactly how it'll work out. But Chris, what you got? Who's your answer, brother?
Oh, I want to piggyback off that for a second because I think it's such an interesting point because it cracks me up. I asked him this at media days. I was like, dude, you're 15. I didn't say dude because that would have been bad. But I was like, you're 15-3 against ranked opponents. That's the best record of any coach in America by a large amount. There's only 3 coaches in the SEC that had a 500 or better record all time as or maybe is at their current school, I guess, as against the top 25. And it was him. I think Heupel was like a 12-11 or something like that at the start of the year. And then you had obviously Kirby. And every time you see a ranking in the offseason about the coaches, every single time it was like you just said, Kiffin, Sark, Dan Lanning, Kirby, and it's like he's undefeated against all of those. But the big thing is like, how do you figure out to beat Vandy and Oklahoma and these 6-6 teams? Because like as good as he's been against the ranked opponents, the downfall has been unranked opponents, double-digit favorites on the road, all that kind of stuff. And I think when you look at who's the best team, the most equipped to win a national championship, there's no part of me that's ever short-winded. So I'll just be long-winded and say I think Bama is a really good team. There's so many question marks. And EG, I feel like maybe this is me just trying to like not jinx it and not be.
Oh yeah, in the same way.
So I sat there and looked at Georgia and I'm like, dude, if Georgia just doesn't have that stupid play call on 4th and 1, maybe they win that game. If Vandy doesn't fumble inside the 10-yard line, maybe they go up 14-0 and they're able to win that game. Mizzou runs Ahmad Hardy or hits that wide open receiver. Tennessee doesn't throw an interception. But the bottom line I finally realized going into the month of November was the one thing they all had in common in those games is Bama won. And they found a way to win every single one of those.
Yeah.
They survived South Carolina. They win last week against LSU. I just feel like if they can figure out a way to win this weekend, if Josh Pate just is right and they win by double digits, I will be – my expectations will be hard to temper. I'll say that going into the finals part of the season. As far as the national title goes, I do think Lane – getting into that kind of like playoff, that kind of realm where it's like you're in these like very specific matchups and how to go beat and out scheme other people. I cannot wait to see Ole Miss in the playoff. But my very long-winded answer is probably Kirby, man, because he's the only one that's really done it. And I feel like you're seeing this Georgia team maybe start to peak at the right time going into the late months of the season. So I gave you 3 options. You asked me for one. I didn't answer the question. I talked a whole bunch though.
That's okay, like a true politician. And I'm going to actually add to that. But I think that, you brought up the unranked road games and that was a problem for Alabama last season. But I think after week 1, it worked itself out. And I think that that's something that Alabama needs to get credit for is figuring out ways to win. And against South Carolina, like you brought up, Chris, time of possession has been huge for this team. That is that when you look at the statistics, they are controlling the game because of their time of possession. And that's been typically how they've been able to win games. Against South Carolina, they were dominated in that aspect, yet found a way to win. And I think that big credit to the defense for, it's almost like when a team is in the red zone, Alabama's defense is like, yes, please. Thank you. I'm glad you're here.
Right.
I'm really glad to, flip the field on you basically. And so again, that goes back to, yes, Alabama has struggled in that area. But I think this season, after week 1, we saw a major shift in that. And that's, a tribute to the culture that, Coach DeBoer has maintained from Coach Saban, but also built himself, the staff, the buy-in from players, and just knowing what the overall goal is. And I also go back to as well, the sentiment that, no one is satisfied in that facility where they're at right now. And the thing I continuously hear is there's still so much room for improvement, so much improvement. We are not even close to where we need to be, that there's still so much more to Ty's game. There's still so much more to, and I know we're talking about Bama a lot, guys, sorry.
Yeah. And we're going to continue to do so.
We are. But it's one of those things where I think there's so many facets of this Bama team that in my opinion, we haven't seen them peak to their fullest. I think the defense is close because they are continuing to be difference makers. But the offense, I think there's another level that we just haven't seen yet. And I'm excited to.
Oh, it's well said. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think Bama has as good a shot as anybody. Can they find a ground game? That's where you want to see that in the second level or the second half of the last quarter of the season, I guess, if you will. That's my one big hang up with Alabama. I know that they're going to be efficient on third downs, that Ty Simpson can go through progressions, that he can move the sticks to a plethora of different receivers. I know that they're obviously very, very well coached. But at some point, it feels like you almost have to be able to run the football. Ohio State last year switched schemes late, and they dominated on the ground. Saw what they were able to do. Not saying that they can't, just saying when I think Alabama, and as far as national championship upside, that's the one big pause that I have. But if you look at every top team in the SEC, everybody has some type of question mark. And, they allow a lot of explosive plays. We've seen them give up over 40 points twice this season. But like y'all said about Alabama, they've won both games. They find ways to win. Unfortunately, Georgia does feel like they're peaking a little bit. Kind of terrifying to be going into there this weekend of all times. Them probably coming off their best performance of the season, just more complete than in weeks past. But I definitely agree with you, Chris. I think the most intriguing team to see in the playoffs is definitely Ole Miss. See how Lane takes advantage of his opportunity, where he gets him, especially with all the rumors swirling on a daily basis about the guy. So. That's I would agree. I guess if I had to pick one, I would give Alabama the best odds, if you will. Not really a big math guy, so don't ask me to come up with those odds. But of everybody in the SEC, that's probably who I would take first. But yeah, can Georgia? If you take Georgia away on and again we'll get into that. But if you can take Georgia's ground game away, and put them behind the chains a little bit, that offense looks a lot different. So that's one of my only hangups with Georgia. But man, the defense seems to be getting a lot better, as you would expect a Kirby Smart defense to get. All right, let's officially talk Bama. Let's officially talk OU. This is a big one. I'm sweaty over this one strictly because I need Oklahoma to take another L. We'll go ahead and kick them out of this playoff picture. I want there to be no debate. We need Alabama to go ahead and be a clear-cut SEC championship game representative playoff team. But when you look at Oklahoma, Emily, what are your thoughts on the Sooners and what Brent Venables is doing with that program?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that the discussion has leaned towards is the defense, and they're a very well coached team. And I think that when you look at Brent Venables, he's very creative when it comes to the defense. And I think that that's something when you look at, Alabama struggles in the run game, that's an area that it has not been favorable. And I think that there's a few mismatches with strengths and weaknesses that make this a very intriguing matchup. I think it being in Bryant-Denny is huge, and it's a 2:30 kick. So I'm expecting there to be a lot of energy. You almost want it to be a night game. If you're Bama, you want one more. We had our last one this past weekend. But it's an intriguing matchup for a lot of reasons, because you also have that revenge factor that is playing a role in this. And we've heard it, from the coaching staff, from Ty Simpson this week, that, there's a certain revenge to this. And as I said earlier, how Ty said, he never wants to feel that spooky feeling that he felt when they went to Norman last season. What sticks out to me, guys, is that this is yet another test for Kalen DeBoer and this Alabama team. I don't think that, and I said this on a few shows following the FSU game, I said, you could beat Georgia, you can beat Tennessee, you can beat LSU, but people are still going to point back to that week 1 loss, along with the, fallings from last season where Bama fell short. And until Alabama is in the playoffs and winning a national championship, the expectations are always going to be through the roof. And so this week, and what you have is, no, it's not on the road, but it's a team that defensively presents a lot of wrinkles to an offense that seems to be a little bit out of rhythm the last couple of weeks. And so Kalen DeBoer also has been perfect at home in Bryant-Denny. That's huge. They have the longest winning streak now in their house. And so a lot of facets play into this, but I'm excited to see, what Alabama comes out with. I'm again expecting a lot of high energy, but it's, there's a lot of football left for Alabama.
What do you think, Chris? Obviously this is the biggest football game that Oklahoma's played in since they've gotten into the SEC. Could have said the same thing about their trip to Neyland Stadium, which is a good thing for Venables. And, his trend line as far as being the Oklahoma head coach. Do you think that his seat is safe at the moment for, considering where he has Oklahoma? And then what do you think about this matchup in particular, brother?
I think it is. I mean, it's like they're kind of barreling towards a 9-3 finish just because of LSU and Missouri coming up after this game. It does very much feel like if they win this game, they'll make the playoff, just because, they play Missouri. I think Purbuell will probably still be out. You get both those games at home. LSU's really struggled offensively for most of the year, and you have to also wonder LSU could lose this weekend to Arkansas. Are they going to be checked out by that game? There's so many just sliding doors and dominoes that are still going to fall from this game, or from this week and the next couple weeks in college football in general. They're so good at getting after the passer and stopping the run, obviously, but they're so good off the edge. And you saw what they did against Auburn, which is a pretty bad offensive line in comparison. Bama's been really good this year at times. I think Ty Simpson's been awesome at evading the rush and all that kind of stuff. The most frustrating part about Alabama not being able to run the football is not just they can't do it, but it's that they sometimes get even way too cute on the play calling. And EG, I don't know if you remember this. I think it was the first drive when it was 2nd and 2, and I think they call a pass play. They run. It's 4th and 1, and I forgot what the exact play was.
Vandy? Are you going?
No, against
LSU.
Against LSU, they did it against Vandy too, though. Against Vandy on 4th and 1, they had a design. They had a play action pass, and it's if you hit that, sure, you're a genius. But I think there's a lot of Alabama fans, probably all of them, that would say, I want to know that you can go gain 1 yard. Gene Stallings, I hate to sound old, but I'll date myself here. He had a quote in that game against Miami in 92 in that national title. If you can't gain 1 yard, you don't deserve to win the game. Mm-hmm. And that's how I feel about this run game. And it's you see stuff where they're lining up with direct snaps and all this motion. And some of that's great, but also I think there'd be a much better comfort with this team and settling in the fan base if they felt like they could line up and run the football for 1 yard and make sure that they can move the chains. So that part's frustrating. We'll see what they'll be able to do. But I will say this: every time they've gone into a game, the biggest question mark usually for this team, how are they going to be able to stop this, or how are they going to be able to combat this? They've answered it very, very well. At home, I think is huge. Black Hoodie of Death, I think is huge. And then the biggest thing for me too, man, is Oklahoma is great at a lot of stuff. Their fans do not currently like me for saying this because I kind of sounded off about it. John Mateer has one of the highest ceilings of any quarterback in the country, not just the SEC, but the country. Great athlete, all the tools in the world, all that kind of stuff. Tell me a game where he has come out and lit the world on fire and not turned the ball over, because he hasn't done both those things. Maybe Temple. This isn't Temple. So like he hasn't done. He's turned the ball over consistently almost every single start he's made. And I look at it when it's like, well, when this whole team was peaking, it was what they did against early in the season against Auburn, what they did against Michigan. And I don't think that they're going to be able to come into to Bryant-Denny and play a clean game necessarily. Like the defense will be very well. That'll travel. But John Mateer has shown over and over and over again. There's a reason why he has eight passing touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Like that's not what we heard was going to happen, him coming in here after what he did at Wazoo. So I don't think that he's going to be able to play a clean game against that defense that is number one in the SEC in turnovers forced with 16, number one in turnover margin, I think with like 9 or something like that. 10, I'm looking at it right now. And in comparison to how little they force turnovers, I think that's where the game is ultimately won or lost, because if they can, it's going to be a low scoring game. I don't think Bama's going to get into the 30s by any means, but I just don't trust Oklahoma's offense enough that they're going to be able to sustain any sort of long-term success against that Bama defense.
Well, you mentioned that in terms of what Bama's been able to do. At the beginning of the season, they really struggled to affect the quarterback, and that was a very big focal point. And now we've seen such improvement in that.
Yeah.
That it's encouraging to see, because that's what you want to see, right? And you've had guys, especially with the linebacker position, you've had guys that have gone out that aren't around, that whether it's an injury. Quay Russaw, I think he's almost back to playing. We'll see. But with that being said, it's they've had guys that have had to step up, and they've done that, and affecting the quarterback has been one of those ways that they've been able to do it.
Yeah, definitely have two teams that are really dang good at getting to the passer right now. Guys, we're going to hear from our second sponsor of the night, Luxe Kitchen and Bath, and we'll keep talking Sooners and Tide.
Are you ready to love your kitchen and bathroom again? Luxe Kitchen and Bath will bring that to life. Luxe has been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. With 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers and skilled craftspeople to bring your dream vision to life. But that's not all. Luxe's all-star team also provides full home remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe Kitchen and Bath at 833-358-LUXE today, or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Get your free quote today by calling 833-358-LUXE. That's LUXE, or by visiting luxekitchenbath.com. Contact info is in the description.
All right, guys, real quick, let's get a couple of keys that you think for both sides to winning this game. I'll start real quick. For Oklahoma, man, it's continued to implement the run game. This is not something that Sooner fans have been used to over the last couple of seasons, but you saw it in the second half at Neyland Stadium. They kind of broke it open a little bit. Again, had a little help through because they were having success through the air, which always is going to help the ground game a little bit. Now, this is not the Tennessee Vol defense. This is a different monster. Tennessee was very beat up in the secondary going into that game. They lost a couple of pass rushers during that game, and all of a sudden their ground defense, their pass defense, or their pass rush, has slowed down a lot. So for me, if there's any chance at Oklahoma walking out of Titletown with a win, it is going to mean that they probably had a bigger game on the ground than many think they'll have. I think that they're going to have to rush for something around 125, 140 yards just to be in the football game, and not on John Mateer scrambles, on broken down plays, or anything of that nature. And then two, I think it's you're going to have to put Alabama behind the sticks pretty consistently here. If Alabama gets in a third and short range often, I think that Grubb and DeBoer are damn good enough, at getting them some very easy plays. We saw how they iced the game against Georgia. I feel like they have a full bag of those third and short plays. I've watched them. We've all watched them here on Inside Texas. We know what they've got in there, and so putting Ty Simpson in some longer down and distances on third downs, that's going to be key for Oklahoma. So Luckily for OU, Alabama has not shown, that they're obviously not a dominating type run team. And so if they can win first and second downs and then again get off the field, help out that offense a little bit, maybe with some short fields, things of that nature. But I don't expect it to happen at all. I will go ahead and say I definitely expect an Alabama victory. But how about you, Emily? Give me a couple of keys for Alabama to win this game.
Yeah, I think the number one thing is the defense needs to continue what they've been doing, right? That has been a solid entity for Bama. But I think when it comes to Ty Simpson, and this has been something that, he's even said himself, is getting the easy things done, right? We've seen how incredible he is off schedule all season long, but going back to the basics in a way, and he talked about it on Saturday night. I asked him, what he wants to improve on with his game as we enter the last quarter of the season. And he said, doing those things right, getting the easy things done, and getting the on-schedule throws right, because he had a few overthrows to Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams on Saturday. And so I think if that piece can come together, I think that can compensate for the lack of run game right now. And I don't expect this to be the game where we see the run game break out against OU's defense. Obviously, as a Bama fan, you'd love for that to happen. But I think getting Ty back just to playing his game. And he said that one of the things this time of year is that you kind of stray away from the mechanics in a way because you're so focused on learning the scheme. And so getting back to that is going to be important for him, as he said on Saturday night. But I think it comes down to really, the defense continuing to be, very disruptive, very effective, especially in the red zone. And then Ty, continuing to make the incredible Sunday throws while also getting the easy ones down as well.
Now, well said. How about you, Chris? A couple of keys for Bama, a couple of keys for Oklahoma.
I don't want to talk about Oklahoma anymore. I think, I don't want to give any more keys for them. I'll say for Bama, I think that the biggest thing for me is playing from ahead. Not a team that's played from behind very well when they get down early by a lot. You saw that last year against Oklahoma. Saw it against Vanderbilt. That pick six, they kind of put them up by double digits. Michigan in the bowl game. E.g., am I missing one? Florida State this year.
Florida State. But then South Carolina, they got back on track this year with it.
True.
But yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
I think the big thing for me is they need to come out and at the very least, if they're going to get into a brawl with Oklahoma and get into a street fight with them where it's very physical and low scoring, fine. It's going to be uncomfortable either way. There's going to be a lot of drinks in my house being poured and I think having to be consumed just to get through the emotions of this game for sure. The worst part, by the way, guys, I have to cover the South Carolina stuff. They start at 11. I'm going to be in Tiger Stadium covering the LSU game at 11:45, and then Bama starts at 2:30. So,
yikes!
It's going to be a tough scene.
Praying for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I think that my biggest thing is Connor Talty. You look at the red zone efficiency of this defense for Oklahoma. Not only have they given up the fewest amount of touchdowns of the year, I think it's 8 or 9 on the season. They have a lower percentage rate than Alabama, but they also have they have a higher percentage rate than Alabama, but they've also allowed the fewest trips besides Texas of any team in the SEC with just 19 on the year. If Bama cannot get into the red zone and score, which they are very, very good at, right? That first field goal needs to go through the uprights because I think the kicking game is a little bit of a head case right now where they're at with that. They need to come out of I'm not saying you need to go put out 14 in the first quarter. I am saying that you need to be efficient to where if you hit the lineup for a 44-yard field goal late in the game on 4th and 3, you feel like you can at least go make that attempt and not have, the offense go out there once again and lose a dimension of the football game because you're so bad at the special teams aspect of it right now. That's my biggest thing. I think forcing turnovers is if they win the turnover battle and if they're able to be efficient, I think in special teams, I think they should be able to win this game. I got so uncomfortable last year watching that Tennessee game where Milroe dropped back 49 times.
Oh, yeah.
I would almost be okay with that in this game. I think, and Cord, you and I have talked about this too. Oklahoma's a very physical, secondary and defensive backs, and I don't mean it in a positive way or a compliment at all. They are the handsiest bunch of. It's like a bunch of old people around. It's. I'm not going to use that reference. You know what? We're going to keep it PG here. But it is very, very handsy constantly, and it's tugging on jerseys. A lot of interference that doesn't get called. I think it'll be interesting to see how that's officiated because if they're going to let them play on jump balls and 50-50 balls, that'll be I think a big storyline as well, because it's just been a consistent thing for them all season long.
See, guys, I was on here complaining about Oklahoma and getting away with highway robbery in the secondary a couple of weeks ago. Got another guy. I didn't pay him to say that. I didn't even text him before the show and ask for that backup. They definitely, and we've talked to Chris and I have texted a little bit about this before. They mug guys out there and they dare you to throw the flag on every single snap. And again, they know that most officiating crews are not going to do that, or most of the times they won't throw them on the bulk of the snap. So, and this is not something new. Oklahoma's been doing this for quite a while. So again, officiating always a interesting point of topic amongst SEC football weekends. So can't wait to see what happens. But at the end of the day, I don't think that Oklahoma allows. You getting out of here, Chris? What was the way?
I had to go. Yeah, I have to go. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I thought you were wrapping that one sentence up. That's my fault. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Texas, Georgia, real quick. Who wins?
Georgia's lost 2 games in 8 years in Sanford Stadium by 6 total points.
Please leave now.
All right.
Thank you, brother. But no, at the end of the day, for me, Emily, it's a matter of being on a mission. We said that last time you were on Inside Texas, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago. And part of that mission is the vengeance does play into college football a little bit. It is an easy motivator. And considering that, Oklahoma struggled a bit, we'll call that, we'll be nice. They struggled a bit in SEC play last year. And they had one feel-good moment there at home against Alabama on a late Saturday night. So between the revenge being the motivator and that being a big factor, it's just Alabama's the better team. And these teams, Oklahoma doesn't run the ball great, and Alabama doesn't run the ball great. Oklahoma's more efficient through the air. They turn the ball over less. And overall, I think they have the better defense. I think Oklahoma might have the better defensive line. But when you factor in linebackers and secondary, I think it, in my opinion, is pretty clear that Alabama's the better side. They're at home. And I think there's got to be a little bit of the Crimson Tide, maybe a little discussion in the locker room like, hey, maybe we can kind of end these guys' season right here. You know what I mean? It's not just that we can beat Oklahoma this week. It's like it's going to feel a little bit sweeter because we'll know that third loss could ultimately be too much to get them into the playoffs if they end up with 3. Personally, Oklahoma, if they finish with 3 losses, I think they have to be a playoff team. But we'll talk about that later in the year. So, do you have an official prediction? Are you allowed to give out
I don't. I'm very tight-lipped on it, but I'm excited to see Saturday, and I think that it's games like this that just there's so many storylines, and I love that with my job. As a reporter, I think that that's one of the coolest elements is like unpacking the different storylines and seeing the different connections. And it was funny. Coach Grubb on Monday was asked about the sign stealing, if you will, from OU, and again, all what they do is legal. It's within the parameters. But it was hilarious because he looks at the camera. He's like, if Venables is watching right now, like everything is going to be changed. But it was pretty funny, one of those moments. But I think that, Bama, they're in a lot of ways, they're improving. And as Coach Womack continuously says, good teams improve. And that's what it comes down to. And this time of year, if you're not continuously improving, you're not going to see yourself, playing in December and hopefully January.
No, that's well said. You have to play well right now because there is not a lot of room for error. And then you got to line up and the next week and do it all over again. And then the next week after that. So it's definitely really cool to be a part of this conference. It's a blast. I'm glad that we have matchups like we have with Oklahoma and Alabama, 2 iconic brands. You get to see the helmets line up across from one another. It's something that in my 37 years of life, I've only seen a couple of times. So I love this conference. I love these matchups, but let's pivot over. Texas travels to Athens and gets Kirby and the Dogs. Obviously, like everybody knows, Texas went 0-2 versus Georgia last year. The first one at DKR, not much of a contest for the most part. A lot of drama, though. You had fans throwing things on the field, officials overturning calls in interesting manners. Texas fighting their way back into the game and then giving up a 3rd and 17 from inside their own 10-yard line before Georgia
had a wedding, Ford. I was at a wedding that day. Can you imagine? That was Tennessee, Bama, and then Texas, Georgia. And I was going to watch it on my phone. But that was
I'm sure your friend is a lovely person.
She is.
But at the end of the day, I hope you did sit down and have like a little talk. Like, I'm rooting for your marriage, but if there was maybe a second marriage down the line, like,
I'll be at that one.
Yeah, springtime, summertime.
So, a little context for you people. I was a bridesmaid in it, and it was a very quick turnaround on that they wanted to just, go ahead and have a beautiful fall wedding. And so I said there are not very many people that I would miss the third Saturday in October with as I cover Alabama. But I did it. But going forward, if any of my friends are watching this, I love you guys, but no fall weddings.
I remember now on the last show we actually were talking about this because I think
Yeah.
you came on for Tennessee Bama week.
Was
That's
that
awesome.
Probably, yeah.
I think so, yeah, because you talked about how you're literally always,
Yeah.
there or watching. But
Yep.
yeah, if you're listening out there, it's not that we don't love you or rooting for your marriages or future marriages. It's just timing. Timing is important. You know what I
Timing is
mean?
everything.
It's a job for EG. So you gotta think about it like that. It's not just a hobby. All right. Quoting my favorite golfer, Kevin Kisner there. But Texas at Georgia. Last year in the SEC title game, Texas matched Georgia's physicality. They definitely did not in October, which that was on my birthday. So, you missed SEC title game. I ruined a birthday by going to DKR and watching Kirby smack us around a little bit, and even had his son in the stands next to me trolling, and he was within parameters, having a lot of fun.
Yep.
Yeah, right. It's part of the game. Well, why we love it. But Texas just couldn't get over the hump. A couple of missed field goals in that game, a couple of poor red zone execution. And then Gunnar Stockton getting things done. Georgia moving to a ground attack because they really couldn't do anything through the air. But hey, it was enough. Georgia found another SEC title. Like Chris said, they seem to be peaking a little bit. Defense has really struggled at times throughout the season. The offense has started slow here or there. Tennessee, slow start there, and then boom, they erupted for a lot of points. But at the end of the day, Georgia's in the playoff picture as much as anybody. The Dogs have just a one Alabama loss early in the season. And obviously, they're very, very tough at Old Sanford Stadium. What kind of chance do you give Texas and Steve Sarkisian going into this one?
It's an interesting game for a lot of reasons. And you put out a lot of, why the storylines are what they are going into this game. And obviously, Alabama played Georgia at their home stadium. But I think that Texas does have a chance here. I think that, I really like Georgia just based off of what they've been able to do these last couple of weeks with, and I say this, I think Kirby Smart is so incredibly good at in-game adjustments. And obviously when you're in the SEC, you have to be, right? No coach is bad at it, but I think that Kirby has a particular just feel for it. And Georgia is such a second half team that I feel like the issue is Texas is never going to really feel comfortable for good reason. I don't really think there is a number I can give for them to feel comfortable in this game because it's at home, because of Kirby's, in-game adjustments, halftime adjustments. So I do think that Georgia has the upper hand in a lot of ways, but I think that this is still going to be, I think this has a chance to be a classic. I mean, truly, and just how you were talking about Bama and OU lining up, like the visual of Texas and Georgia lining up. I love it. Like my dad and my uncles will be there. And it's going to be a fun matchup that I'm excited to watch. But I think literally, as Charlie Williams says, UGA is finally, having a complete game and they're hitting their stride. And unfortunately, Texas is on, the other side of that. Yeah,
and that's the big thing. One could argue that Texas is playing, some of their better football, at least on the offensive side of the football, these last couple of weeks. But again, Georgia seemed to have it all put together there. A lot of people were a little bit concerned about them traveling to Starkville. We've seen Mississippi State kind of hang around with just about everybody that they've played. And I sat there and said that I expected Georgia to win that game just due to the fact that Mississippi State had to be on some sort of emotional roller coaster. They really did. I mean, they were up in Texas game. They're down in that game. They lose that game. Yeah. Then you have the Florida game. And then you finally get there. You get that win over Arkansas. And so I was like, I didn't really know what to expect out of Mississippi State, but I know that Kirby's going to have his side dialed in, because they definitely have room for improvement, especially on that defensive side of the ball. And so, no, I mean, it is kind of scary to be going in there. I wish that game was more in September, October. But then again, at the same time, we saw what Texas looked like in early October as they went to Gainesville and got handled by the Gators. So I agree. I do think Texas has a chance in this game. Texas is going to have to match the physicality of Georgia. Same thing as last year we saw. You have to. You got to be a big boy SEC team here. This is not a little guy's game. But this is the main thing for me. Yeah. Can Texas stop Georgia on the ground? Texas is very highly ranked, as our good friend David Keith Williams is pointing out. But Georgia, in my opinion, they have my favorite back in the SEC. I think Nate Frazier is a problem. You factor in what Gunnar did to us with his legs last year, and again, they don't want to sit there and run Gunnar 15 times in this game. but he can definitely help move the sticks.
Yeah, and it adds a wrinkle too that you have to be prepared for.
Of course. And so in this game, we've seen a Texas team that plays a little bit of a bend but don't break style on defense under Coach Peter Kwiatkowski. But Georgia, I think, is going to be really working hard on just being in third and short, being efficient on third down, taking what the defense gives them there, because we've seen Texas play some pretty soft zone coverage at times. And so, yes, you've got to win first and second downs. You got to put Georgia behind the sticks. I think that's going to be very, very big here because you got a Georgia team that just, they average just over 20 points a game against top 50 defenses. You got Gunnar Stockton, who are averaging under 200 yards against top 50 defenses. Stop the run, because that's the same thing that's happened in those games. Teams have been able to stop Georgia on the ground, put Georgia behind the chains, and then the offense looks a little bit different. Mm-hmm. They're able to add the tight ends into this offense, that's the big thing on offense that really scares me. I'm terrified of Oscar Delp and Lucky Lawson if he does play in this game. Their matchup the nightmares, and so they're good blockers. They're good in the pass department, and so it's a Georgia team that's getting better and better, as one would anticipate with a young Kirby Smart defense. His side it seemed at one point like they were the side of the ball that was a little bit behind the offense.
I would agree with that. Mm-hmm.
They've definitely, I think they've definitely closed the gap. But as far as Texas, we've had a lot of struggles with our defense here in the last couple of weeks. Is there anything that you've seen that should give Texas fans hope that, hey, a turnaround performance is coming here? Because for 3 quarters, we held a really, I'm not going to call them potent, but a very competent Bandy offense. They're dang good at moving the football. Texas really held them down for 3 quarters.
Yeah, and I saw firsthand. My light died. I saw firsthand how effective Vandy's offense can be against Alabama with Diego Pavia. But I think for Texas, it's about putting together a complete game. And that means putting a complete game together in all 4 quarters. And that really, you want that to happen here against Georgia. A lot of Georgia fans don't necessarily love Mike Bobo, the offensive coordinator, and what he kind of brings to the table with this. And so I think that for Texas, it's all about, starting fast against a team like Georgia. But like I said, Auburn started fast against them, and we saw what happened. So I think that does play a factor in it. But again, if Texas can put together a complete game, I do think there are some favorable matchups that can go Texas's way. But I feel like the environment on Saturday is going to be absolutely insane. And there is a revenge factor for you guys in this game as well. Just like, Bama and OU, there's definitely a revenge factor. But I was really impressed with the stadium and just Athens as a whole. And, I grew up going to Georgia games, but they've really in the last couple of years, and Texas fans don't want to hear this, I'm sorry guys, but improved the game day atmosphere and improved, what they do inside that stadium to get the fans involved and the noise and all of that good stuff. So I'm expecting to be rowdy. And what time is the game?
6:30 kickoff.
6:30 kick. Yeah. So I'll be wrapped up in Tuscaloosa, and I will be looking forward to settling in to catch this one.
I already have anxiety just listening to every word I know it's all true. You're going to see a ton of red. You're going to see some makeup on a few guys. You'll see some skulls and crossbones. You're going to see it all, and there will be plenty of barking. I will say this: always. Last year, I underestimated their audacity to get in Texas fans' faces and bar. And hey, again, they're having fun, just a bunch of college kids. But I underestimated that. That was a funny scene at DKR last year because they were like, I don't love it. I'm going to be honest. I don't love it. Definitely not in someone's face. You want to bark at them from afar, sure, that's fine. But yeah, there was a couple guys that were getting really, really close to a couple of gentlemen, and the burnt orange gentleman didn't love it.
Didn't appreciate it. Yeah.
Again, you know what I mean? It's we would play Iowa State, and they wouldn't have fans inside of DKR. We would play. I'm trying to think who West Virginia. That's a long trip for a mountain man to make. Okay, that's a good hike. So it's cool just to be in the conference. But yeah, like Charlie says, they're not going to abandon the run game. You saw them in the SEC title game last year. Yeah, that's all they really had to do. But it would have been very easy to just sit back and try to find some type of passing concept that Gunnar liked, and that they're patient. Yeah, and so they're going to sit there and poke and prod on that ground game and hope that they can find an explosive, and then again lean and trust on that defense, trust on special teams. That was a big part of how they won the last 2 games, or the 2 games with Texas last year. So I mean, it is a scary time to be getting Kirby and the Dogs. I will say this: I think that Georgia doesn't do a great job of getting pressure if they can't send more than 4. They're going to have to send 5 or 6 at times, and it's always normally coming from their linebackers. Secondary, coverage-wise, Georgia's about as basic right now as they've been in several years under Kirby. They're not really complex back there. Well, Texas has to go spread. We can't really run the ball. There's going to be some opportunities for Texas in this game to pick up yards. I feel pretty confidently Texas eclipses a 20-point barrier. But again, now you start talking about the other side of the ball. I don't know. Still undecided on exactly how Texas is able to stop this Georgia attack. If we can handle Georgia on the ground, the blueprint is much, much easier. But for me at the moment, still, I think Georgia's good enough, and they block well enough on the edges. That's where we've been a little bit susceptible to some big plays on the ground, is off the edge. That's what worries me, as I know Georgia will have some tosses, some sweeps, some receiver screens. They're going to hit the edge. Just can't Texas rally, tackle them, and just help out this offense. It's going to be a team effort, going to need all 3 phases. I definitely expect a really, really good football game. Emily, thank you again for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Of course, love talking not just Alabama football with you, but football, all SEC football in general. Guys, if you're still watching, throw a like on the video, and then hop on over to InsideTexas.com and subscribe again right now for just $1. Go do that. Take advantage of the flash sale, $1 for the rest of the month. And again, I think that might be through the rest of the year, but could be wrong on that. But again, thank you guys for being here. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do that already. But yeah, have a good rest of your evening. And as always, get ready for another fun-filled week of SEC football. Thanks again, EG. We'll see y'all next time.